has failed one of the most vulnerable employee populations by not raising the wage appropriately or in compliance with Connecticut state law. It is a failure of the New Haven Public Schools to pay below the state mandated minimum wage, and a failure of the Director of Human Resources, whom I have contacted, to remain silent on this issue and not immediately fix it. Thus, I have three demands as a taxpayer of New Haven, as I do not want the city to be liable in more legal issues than has already occurred in the past year. First, raise the minimum wage or raise the substitute wage to regain compliance with Connecticut state law. Second, provide immediate back pay to all employees who are unfairly affected by this unacceptable inaction. And third, implement a system to ensure that this issue does not happen in the future. I do not want to have to take further action than sending an email out to Human Resources and addressing this committee, but I will if need be. I do expect all items to be remedied within 30 days of this meeting. Once again, I speak before you to help represent those who might not want to voice their concern. I sincerely hope that my presence on these issues does not become a regular event at these committee. If you have any questions for me, I am happy to provide my contact information. And once again, I remain willing and able to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Madam President, that concludes all hands raised.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. We will move on to the action items, the first being the approval of the board meeting minutes of January 8th, 2024. There a motion to approve?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, any discussion? Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, I just have one thing, just a suggestion. I was looking for something on one of the meeting minutes, and I think it might be good for the action items to be appended to the end of each of our meeting minutes. They used to be where everything was spelled out as individual items, and now it's kind of the bulk, which we tend to move them as a bulk just to make it easier and separate out the ones where people have issues with them. But I think just as far as the minutes go, so that the minutes can stand for themselves, that the action items, the simplest way forward might be just to append those so that moving forward, the minutes also have those just on the same document, the same PDF, so that people know exactly what those action items were if they ever need to refer to them. Thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on approving the board meeting minutes of January 8th, 2024. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarber is not on. Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. We'll move on to the personnel report. Dr. Negron?
Good evening, thank you. Before I ask for your approval of the personnel report, I do want to highlight some retirements. Here you will see that we have two teachers and one non-instructional staff person. First, I want to start with Mimi Bryant, the pre-K teacher at Davis Street Magnet School, who retired on January 2nd. I want to acknowledge that she served for 22 years of service to the students, families, and the entire New Haven Public Schools community. Also want to acknowledge Phyllis Voira, computer education teacher at Nathan Hill School, who will retire at the end of this academic year. She will have served 25 years of service to students, families, and the New Haven Public Schools community. And last but not least, Elva Verdiel, administrative assistant at Metropolitan Business Academy, who also retired on January 20th. She served for a total of 26 years, again, servicing students, families, and staff. Thank you. Yes.
There a motion to approve the personnel report, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Benitez. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the action items on the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. And so that item passes. Finance and Operations Report, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, thank you. Just want to check in to see if anybody needs anything moved separately. And also just let you know, I'm going to move the two Head Start certifications separately, just to make sure. Occasionally we have where as part of the application process, the minutes have to be there and sent in as well. And so we want to make sure that they're really standing out as both seen and approved by the board. So. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion, and that is I move that we approve the 10 agreements, the 1 contract, the 1 purchase order, and the 2 change orders as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, seeing no discussion, we'll vote on the F&O items. Mr. Wilcox.
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And so those items pass.
All right, I'm going to make the next motion, and that is I move that we approve the Head Start certification number 1, approval to submit the application for a grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve Head Start certification number 1. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That item passes.
And finally, I move that we approve the Head Start certification number 2 and approval to submit a low-cost extension application.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Benitez, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the Head Start certification number 2. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Yabar still not on. Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Wilcox?
It does. Thank you.
The action items? Okay, and now we will move on to the students' report. Do we have a students' report?
Yes. A very brief one. Can y'all hear me correctly?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. As y'all know, a lot of the work happens in the background. We're still working with students. The most immediate thing we're going to do is we're going to create a committee with student council presidents for them to start planning agendas for the citywide student council meeting. We've also been working with some district officials, some members of the board, some students and other community stakeholders to implement and execute our Hope and Victory directives, which we presented in the beginning of the school year. For now, that's all from me. And if y'all have any questions, you can always email me.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz Bustamante. Mr. Musser, any report on your end? Okay, thank you. Teaching and learning report, Dr. Joyner?
Thank you. We had to move the meeting to the last Wednesday because we sent a large contingent of people that are on that committee to Harvard for the data training. And I'd like to congratulate Dr. Negron on her wise judgment in choosing to do that, because we cannot make good decisions without information. And we ought to know in advance when we're doing projects what we want the outcomes to be. And so Dr. Benitez and I had a brief meeting this morning about policy. And we have those policies that we had started working on a few months ago that we kind of got delayed, and we're back at that again. And we should be doing our second and final, we should be on our final reading for that, if I'm correct. And I'd rather for Dr. Benitez to speak to that. But we are going to be on that. And I'm also in the process of talking to Dr. Negron and the people associated with teaching and learning in the district about what our priorities are going forward and what kinds of policy initiatives do we need in order to build a wall of protection around the important activities. The other issues, if it's still planned, I believe Matt and I have a meeting with Harmony and the students. Is it still planned, Dave, for Friday? And I would like to add that it is in our policy and teaching in our instructional policy that we should try to create a curriculum that is of great interest to students. And one of the ways that you do that is to, if you're teaching in the block, there ought to be a time where students can pursue their own interests within the context of the course you're teaching. If it's an American history class and John Carlos is interested in the abolitionist movement, then there ought to be a latitude within that class for him to do private projects on that. And that's really a way of engaging students, because the three most important variables in learning are interest, attention, and memory. Those are facts: interest, attention, and memory. The interest draws them in and causes them to attend, and what they attend to, they keep in their memory. I would also add that we need to have this helpful blend between skills and content, because many of our students are going to college without the requisite writing skills that are necessary in a college environment. So we've got to work on that more. And by the way, that's also in our in our policy. That our policy states that we should be doing writing every day in every classroom in order to help our kids develop proficiency in writing. Language unlocks every content area doing. We need to be working on that, and we need to have some measures and rubrics and all those other things that will let us know that we're doing it in accordance with what best practice is. That concludes my report. We will have a lot more in the first meeting in February, because that will give us time to meet and work on those priorities and report back to the board. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Okay, seeing none. Facilities Naming Committee report, Dr. Joyner?
I'm very happy tonight to say that I believe we have through the cooperation of a lot of people have a presentation that I believe you'll be pleased with. If Eric is on, I think we kind of nailed it down, and I'd like to give a shout out to the superintendent, to Dr. Finley, to Justin Harmon, and all the people on the administrative side that actualize this policy. We actually have to, we create broad policies, but it's up to the professionals in the district to create the administrative procedures necessary to make the policy live. And so I'm going to turn this over to Eric Schultz, and I can't say enough about him. One of the things I learned from Jill Tarazi is that we need to always try to catch people doing something right, and that we need to be our own best critics, but as our own best praisers as well. So I can't say enough about the work that Eric put into this, as well as the other people that I mentioned. So I'm just going to stop and let Eric do his thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm going to share my screen and show the forms that I've set up. I think that should work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is everybody seeing the website?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So with Dr. Joyner's help and his leadership, I have set up a form for nominees to be or people to be nominated for naming of a building or a section of a building. So far, we have 2 people set up, as you can see here. And I will now click. This is off of the Board of Ed section of the website. I can put it wherever you guys would like, but this is where I have it for now. This is open to the public. So when you come to this part of the website, you would click here to view the vote. It would take you to this page for Hazel. The form's designed to be pretty self-explanatory. Pretty much explains what you need to do. So here's a bio, is a description of the form. Then there's a bio of the person in question. And then there's some rules here, eligibility to vote. And then you're required to follow the guidelines below to see that, to make sure you are a suitable person to nominate this ballot. I also have the naming policy, the BOE facilities naming policy here, which you can click on and view if you like. And then here's the form. The person's name, phone number, email, all this is required. A reason why your relationship to the person in question, whether you want to vote yes or no. I'm assuming most people were voting yes, so they wouldn't have gotten this far, but we kept the no in there just in case. And then 3 reasons why you support the nominee. Once the form is complete, you hit submit. And at this point, it will send an email to Dr. Joyner. I can put as many people as you like on that email. I can eventually generate a spreadsheet that can be sent out, and any number of options there. Basically, that's it. And then the other form is very similar, except it's for a different person. This is for Dr. Garris. Same thing, same information, except that his bio is there instead of Hazel's, and so on. So I can do as many of these forms as you like. I think they're best to be shown separately per person, and just to keep things less complicated. But basically, this is how it works, and this is what we've set up. And I'll go back to the form if you want to look at it. Anybody have any questions or concerns or anything?
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for this. While the policy that the board updated a few years ago does require input from, people at the building level and so on, I do think that this is a great way to widen that, to bring in a lot of voices, to be in support, to help the committee make their recommendations to the full board. So I do appreciate that. Thank you for your work, Mr. Schultz. And so I did just want to say, I did appreciate having the little button to bring up the policy. And I just wanted to say, I was looking in the regular policy section, and it looks like the updated policy, I'm not seeing it on the website, which is policy 7551. But
Oh, okay.
but it is, it is right here. So I think that's great. But
I'll take care of that. That's not a problem.
thank you, sir. But I do appreciate this, and I heartily support the naming of these spaces for these 2 individuals that we're seeing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any further questions or comments for Mr. Schultz or Dr. Joyner? Okay, Dr. Joyner?
Okay, just one thing. We have a typo in the beginning with Dr. Garris.
Yeah.
We have him listed as Lenny Garris, and not Lonnie. Yeah, I know. You probably, because we talked last night. Was it last night that we talked about that?
Yeah, it was over the weekend, but I fixed that.
Oh, yeah, over the weekend.
Is it still
Okay.
there?
Yeah, still there. Still there. The other thing, though, is that I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the process that led to this, because if we work this way going forward, we'll do some great things. Dr. Negron saw that I was having trouble with this because, I'm the policymaker. And I was writing bio sketches, and Eric and I were doing a lot of stuff together. But quite frankly, when the board creates a broad policy, it's up to the staff to create the administrative procedures necessary to make the policy a reality. And this was done almost perfectly in the sense that you had the superintendent involved, you had the person in charge of IT involved, you had Eric involved, he's a prime mover in all of this. You had Dr. Finley involved, and you had Mr. Harmon involved. And those were the right people. And I noticed that Dr. Negron is moving toward a project management strategy for improving the district. That's the only way to go. That the big things that we're trying to do, we need to have a person that's a lead person, and we need to be able to divide up the work. We need to be able to evaluate the work. We need to work collaboratively and reach some consensus about what we should be doing. And I just think that that's a great case study. I know that the mayor has taken courses in management and organizational behavior. This is a classical example of how you identify all the key people in the organization necessary to do a particular task. You get them involved, you clarify their roles, you get it done, and then you evaluate it so you can get better the next time. The other thing that Dr. Negron talks about a great deal is reset. And we need an entire system reset. And I think that this process is a way of moving it forward. And I certainly appreciate everything that everyone did to make this happen. And that's all I have to say about it. Thanks a lot. And I'm free at last, at least for this one. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
Thank you. And I fixed that issue.
Okay. See how quickly he responds?
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Dr. Negron.
Thank you. Okay. Before I begin with my presentation related to the strategic operating plan development process, I do want to highlight, and Dr. White is going to be helping me with a presentation that he's going to be putting up. So I want to make sure that I take a moment to highlight the great news about the United States Postal Services celebrating one of our own. And in their 47th Black Heritage Stamp, it will have the portrait of Constance Baker Motley, who is a Hillhouse High School graduate from the class of 1939. So very excited about that. And there's actually going to be, that's a copy right there highlighting the media advisory that they put out. And I guess it's happening on Wednesday down in New York. But again, I just wanted to take a moment that great things have always happened at the New Haven Public Schools. Many alumni have done amazing things. And here you have somebody who was key to the work that happened. And I believe she played a major role in back with the, I think it was with the Board of Education. Yes, Brown. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Brown versus Board of Ed. And again, but one of our own, graduate from Hillhouse, 1939. So again, I wanted to highlight that. We have always had greatness, and that is why I continue to speak about getting us to strive towards the next chapter of excellence in the New Haven Public Schools. So now I'm going to move on to the work of our development of our new strategic operating plan. So Dr. White, on our next slide. So over the next several months, we are going to be embarking in writing and developing the next strategic operating plan. The one that we are currently operating under was one that was written as the roadmap for 2020 to 2024. So that will actually end at the end of this academic year. But I am going to be kicking off the process to develop the next one. And that is aimed to make sure that we have a multi-year plan to advance student achievement that will be focused, cohered, and most importantly, that it is actionable. And one that will look to engage not only internal, but also external stakeholders, and a process that is meant to be transparent so that we can arrive at a shared vision for how it is that we are going to get to success. And one that will look to commit to the long-term process to support, again, a plan that aims for continuous improvement, a plan that then will be monitored in terms of our progress, but at the end of the day, always looking at how we're going to do right by our students. In terms of the process overview, it will have multiple stages, various opportunities for input from stakeholders and the community at large. So in the next slide, I want to give you some insight in terms of how I intend to do that. And for that, I want to highlight some of the project roles. So I have 2 project leads that will be working closely with me, and that is our Chief of Staff, Dr. Finley, as well as our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, and that's Assistant Superintendent Keisha Red-Hannons. The 2 of them are going to be responsible for the day-to-day management of this project of developing our strategic operating plan, and they're going to be working closely with me to make sure that they're helping to elevate whatever decisions are being made through the development process. There's also going to be what I am calling a project team. These are the folks that are going to be responsible for supporting my project leads with the day-to-day management of the project, including logistics and the communication that will go out. Some of those folks are Michelle Bonanno, who is our supervisor of Magnet Grant Programs, Justin Harmon, who is our director of communications, Jessica Haxey, who is our supervisor of world languages, Cora Munoz, who is our one of our assistant principals, John Nguyen, who is our director of research, assessment, and evaluation. And again, these are people that I know have talents related to getting things done rapidly and with a lot of attention. So that is why I recruited them to be part of this project team. And then there's also going to be a design team that is made up of the project team and the project leads, but also chiefs, assistant superintendent, supervisors, instructional coaches, representatives from our teacher union and our paraprofessionals union, students, parents, teachers, school administrators, Board of Education members, community partners, partners from college and universities, partners from the New Haven City, elders, state representatives, and clergy. And this design team is going to be responsible for informing and helping to shape the creation of our district strategic operating plan. We're gonna do this utilizing this timeline that is before you. So we've been planning throughout the month of January. We are going to be engaging in what I am calling design sprints and what I am calling testing and feedback loops, so that doing this with intentionality, I am creating this timeline that will make it possible to bring forth a draft of a strategic operating plan to the Board of Education for approval in May. So in the next slide, I just want to give you some insight as to the way that this is going to work. For example, there are about 50 plus folks who have been invited to be part of this design team. We are going to kick off on February 8th at an in-person meeting. In this meeting, we are going to be reviewing all kinds of data as to where we are as a district. We are also going to ensure that it isn't just a design team. So if you are not there, you also have an opportunity to bring in your voice through this tool that is called Thought Exchange. So for example, starting tomorrow, I am going to put out a thought. So the way that this works will be that there'll be all kinds of emails going out to everybody that is in our system. Also a pool of community folks that we have emails. This thought will go out, and it's very simple. It will have a QR code where anybody can take a phone, and I'm going to show you later some pictures of how it works. They can scan the QR code, and immediately it will bring them to this very simple process where they get my thought. So the first thought that they're going to see is, I'm going to be asking, what is working well in the New Haven Public Schools? So quickly they'll see it. They'll be able to even to use a phone or use a computer, very easy to use, and they'll be able to give an answer. In the following week, I'll put out another thought. And the thought is going to be, what opportunities exist for improvements in the system? The following week, I'm going to put out yet another one that is going to read, what are the most important skills and experiences our students need to get from their education in order to be prepared for success, right? So all of that information that is going to be gathered when we meet with the design team on February 8th, we'll have all that data that will come in that will already be disseminated into patterns and trends. That is what this tool is able to do, leveraging artificial intelligence to be able to make things very quickly. And then what we will do is, in between, when the design team works with that data and produces, for example, information, we'll be able to send it back to get more input and more feedback. So it becomes this loop of not just the people in the room, but also leveraging everybody who's not with us. And the beauty of it, and Dr. White, I think I have it in the next slide, is that through this artificial intelligence in this platform, anybody can do it. You do not have to speak English to be able to do it, because automatically it will translate into any language that you need the tool to do it. So we actually tested it out because I wanted to make sure that what I was saying in public was true. So I'm going to show you a picture how at the last superintendent's meeting, which was it 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, right? No. You see pictures there. I basically put out the thought. Everybody scanned it. I put out a question and I had some people in the room do it in different languages. So some people did it in Spanish, some people did it in Japanese to make sure that we could test it out. And then I want to call your attention to that picture where you see that, almost like that web. And immediately when a thought goes out, it will then ask you to rate it so that you can say whether you agree or don't agree. So it has like this system, even when you go to eat, right, to a restaurant, and you do the quick survey on whether you like your service or you like your meal, right? And you press on the stars. Same situation where you rate, and as you're rating, what it's doing is connecting and it's making that web around the number of people that agree. And that's how the trends are going to be lifted in the moment. So all of that to show you that when this design team comes together, which is probably gonna be about 50 people or so, and I'm gonna pick on Heikles, for example. She accepted the invitation. She's gonna be with us, right? She's gonna be able to see this data that is coming in from the outside and also the data that we're gonna be doing in the moment. So this is going to be my way of expanding. So whenever we do right and we identify what exactly is it that we believe in, what is our vision that we want to co-create for the students of the New Haven Public Schools, I want people to feel like they had voice and that they were part of the process, because this is to be what is going to anchor us in the work that then I am going to lead in the next few years. Because a strategic operating plan should not be a document that you create, that is beautiful, you celebrate it, you put it in a file cabinet, and then everybody forgets. No, it needs to be a plan that is fluid, that gets revisited, that has targets, so that all the work that I will lead in this district needs to be anchored in the priorities that we together are saying are the priorities for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. So that we always have priorities and a roadmap to, again, align and cohere all the decisions that we are making, and that I am eager to have, so that I have a way when a million things are coming at me that are great ideas, that I can say, they're great ideas, but here are the priorities, and I have to make sure that I am lifting first the priorities. And everything that comes need to align to the priorities that we are saying as an entire community. So that is where I am heading with the strategic operating plan. I am extremely excited for the work that is ahead. And I am just looking forward to what the community is going to help us identify as what should be our roadmap to get us to our next chapter of excellence, so that not a few, but all of our students are meeting success, and that they feel prepared when they leave our amazing public school system to do whatever it is that they aspire to do, whether that be college, career, military service, whatever it is that their hearts desire. So that is my report. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Questions or comments for Dr. Negron? I'll acknowledge that Dr. Yarborough has joined us. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, I have a quick question. I first of all, thank you for the clear explanation of what you are planning to do in order to gather and curate the information that you put in this plan. I am wondering, how are we going to include student voice, and who among our staff will be supporting that.
So again, I want to reiterate that there's representation in the design team. But in addition to that, again, everyone in our system, because we're gonna be leveraging PowerSchool, all of these thoughts are gonna go out to the entire community. So for example, all of our students are going to get these questions so that we get their responses. Our staff is also going to get these questions, and our community at large is also going to get these questions. Right now, Justin Harmon and the rest of the team are drafting communication also that we are going to be putting out. So it is consistently available through different channels, whether it be emails, website, or other sources, so that again, I keep this top of mind and people have ease to be able to put in their voice into this process.
Okay, I don't see any further, oh, is Ms. Downer?
Maybe I missed it. Does your plan include, the voice of the parent?
So again, all the parents that are in our PowerSchool, because everything
Okay.
is linked, they will get all the thoughts that are going to go out so that we can gather their information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Negron. And we'll move on to the president's report, and I just have two, hopefully quick items. The first being, we had talked about, changing venues for, the next few months for our board meetings, and we are thinking of starting with, Ross Woodward as of our next meeting, which is February 12th, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know, board members, if there are concerns about that. And if not, if I don't hear anything, then our next meeting will be at Ross Woodward. Same time, also still, via Zoom and hybrid. The next item is the appointment of the, committee for finance and operations. I had mentioned the chairs and vice chairs at our last meeting, but I'll reiterate them again and adding the board members that are going to be at each committee. Finance and operations chair is Mr. Wilcox, vice chair, Dr. Yarborough. I'll remain on as board member. Teaching and learning chair, Dr. Joyner, vice chair, Dr. Benitez, and board member, as we all know, we are all, on that committee per policy, so we are all members of that committee. For Head Start, Chair, Mr. Wilcox, Vice Chair, Dr. Benitez, Governance Chair, Dr. Benitez, Vice Chair, Ms. Andrea Downer, Food Service Task Group, Chair, Dr. Yarborough, Vice Chair, Mr. Wilcox. Facilities naming remains the same, Chair, Dr. Joyner, and I'll remain on as Vice Chair. For citywide school building, the chair is Giovanni Zinn, City of New Haven, Vice Chair, Mr. Wilcox. I'll remain on as board member. Also, I've appointed Ms. Andrea Downer as board member, and we still need a parent for that committee. And for student elections, we'll need a chair, and I have I've asked some board members, but I'm still waiting on a response. And so those are our committees. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Next board meeting is February 13th.
The 13th, correct, because we moved it because of the holiday. So you're right. The next board meeting is February 13th, which is the Tuesday. And we expect that it'll be at Ross Woodward School. And we'll move on to the Head Start report. Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you very much. The Head Start, we met last Thursday, just give you an update on the enrollment. There are vacancies. We have spaces available. I think we have 404 people in the program, 127 open spaces. We're at 76%. We heard information about the process of I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of it, but it's to get the numbers up. So we, as you know, we reported last month, we have, the district has a plan in place to increase those numbers. We also heard about, restructuring in the early learning department that's planned and some moving around of different classrooms so that we'll have more Head Start classrooms throughout the district. The satellite locations, as you know, a lot of the openings, a lot of the classrooms are at the Mayo School. And then the satellite locations that are farther away from there, those tend to be the fullest classrooms. So the plans for some increases there. We also took a look at the Head Start organizational chart and how just how all the pieces fit together. That was part of the application for the next Head Start grant funding, which we hope to hear about in the next several months. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay. Seeing none, we can move on to the Citywide School Building Committee report, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, and briefly, we met January 11th. The School Building Infrastructure and Project Management Stewardship Report was presented, as is every month. It's also posted on the website, in that part of the website for the board committees. We heard updates about adult ed space, both the new space that the design team has been meeting with the architect firm on the plans for the new building. We also had an update on taking care of the old building, which was damaged by water leak, and heard about where that process is in terms of being fully back into that space, and the process of making sure that the district will be made whole in terms of the rent and everything. So that we're not spending money for space that we're not able to use while it's being fixed. We also, as you all know, because I've mentioned it before, the School Building Infrastructure Project Report has all the major projects going on the district, from school pool repairs, clock and bell systems, file panel replacements, roof issues, hot water boiler replacements, HVAC projects, et cetera. It's highly informative, a high-level view of what's happening, and it's lists out of things that are happening at all the various schools. So invite everybody to take a look at that. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay, finance and operations.
And finally, for this report here, just mention a couple different things. One is that we had the December finance report, where our CFO, Ms. Hannons, is noting a deficit of close to 5.9 million, 5.876, that they are working on to mitigate. Key drivers are salaries, which is including overtime for folks like custodian, security, some staff raises, increasing costs, and less than expected revenue from inter-district magnet transfers, and so on. So that we heard a lot of information about their ongoing mitigation strategies. And next month, we're going to get a little more detail on some of the major drivers of the deficit. So so that was the financial report. That report is posted on the website. It's also posted in the meeting materials for this meeting and is in the board packets. We also had an update. We are in the process of updating our agreement cover memos. These are the ones that are on the tops of every spending item that the Finance and Operations Committee sees in the backup document materials. To make those easier to read and easier to fill out, and to make sure that they are up to date with the questions. So we heard an update on that. We're hoping to be looking at a draft at the next meeting. And then finally, we discussed the procurement policy update. We need to make some changes because of some changes with the city's purchasing policies, and we need to make sure we're up to date with that. And so I believe staff are going to be seeking a meeting with the city purchasing folks just to make sure everybody's on the same page so that we can move forward with that. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you.
Governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Yes, good evening, board members and the public. Our next meeting is tomorrow, as we have changed it to the last Tuesday of the month at 4:30 in the evening. I would like though to discuss a couple things just as reminders for the board members so that when we come back with policies, you may have these things in mind. One of the things that I would like to suggest to board members is that when we submit a policy for the first reading, that they pay really close attention to that so that we can correct we can address any concerns that board members have on that first reading, and that when we submit for a second reading, we submit a document that is now being sanctioned for that say without voting by doesn't mean that if at the last minute we change our mind, that's okay. But I am suggesting that the first reading should be something that the committee should get a feedback within a week, saying, or a day, or that same night. I mean, we need to be able to move policies. The other thing is, I was told, and I might be wrong, that at some point there was a discussion about we purchase the proposed policies that are updated by CAVE. They give it to us. It's our document. We have been using the document as a reference. However, at one point, and I wasn't here yet, there was a discussion when you were considering of purchasing these materials, of adopting all of those policies and then adapting them to your specific needs. I don't know if that's something that can be done, but I know that there are some policies that are required to be updated that have not been updated because it takes time to do this. However, if we had adopted all those policies under the assumption that we would be adapting them, I think it would be easier. I may be totally wrong. The other thing that I want the board to consider is that even though I have a staff liaison, it is a staff liaison who's extremely busy, and some of the work that needs to happen, it's not at the level of my liaison. We need a person who can actually clean up things as they are submitted. Sometimes, you know, we're all volunteers. People submit things that then our committee has to clean up, but our committee is really a small committee. And in that committee, we don't have a person who's really good at clerical work. And that cleaning requires someone who has that keen eye of finding typos, finding things that need to be cleaned before it comes to the board. We've found mistakes at times that we have to clean up. So I am just saying, if at one point we could have a board liaison who does that type of thing, it will be very advantageous for our process with updating policy. That concludes my report, but I do need feedback on some of these things.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Questions or comments for Dr. Benitez? Mr. Wilcox?
So I'll just say that I've spent a tremendous amount of time with the policies, and I think while the CAPE model policies usually maybe 98% of every policy is the wording and everything fits for our district. I do think that in some cases there does need to be some changes. My personal preference is that they're looked at before the board passes them. If we can't look at them before, I don't know that we'll do the work of going back and taking a look at it. And then we also have it's built into various things. once the board passes these policies, then it's the responsibility of the superintendent to make sure that the district is following these policies and it actually shows up, you know, just like in basics, like union contracts, that where the requirement is that people follow board policy. It's just, you know, so it's, I would hate for something because it wasn't the true intention of the board, that somebody's held to it, that, I do think another thing that might be helpful is we did have for a while a Yale student who was working, I think, on kind of like an internship or a practicum that I think was tremendously helpful. So I think this was somebody who was a public policy student. So there's also a professional interest or future professional interest for them. And so that might be another avenue of like a paid internship that helps because she was, as I recall, not only good on the details, but also good on the conceptual thinking about the policies, because she was, that's an interest area of hers. So that might be one of those things, but I do think that some sort of board liaison type position or something that helps manage some of this stuff is really, would be useful. Thank you.
We still have that person and she's incredibly helpful because, as you know, I didn't go to school for law. I have learned a lot during this time. And as a professional in the schools, I had to constantly review educational law. But I wasn't in this capacity that I am now making sure that we're creating policies that are going to be mandating the behavior, the interactions that happen in our schools. So she is very helpful and she does help a lot, but as you know, it's a lot of wording. So we need more support in order to bring a quality work to you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Any further questions or comments? Dr. Joyner?
Yeah, I'd like to offer some support for both what Matt said as well as what Dr. Benitez said. The complexity of what we deal with now in modern school system is such that we need exactly what Dr. Benitez asked for. Because if we don't get the roadmap down right, which policy is, then we're going to end up in the wrong place. And I think to some extent that's what Matt was saying, so that we have to customize what we get from CADE. But I looked over some of the policies that are old, and just because they're old does not mean that they're not still relevant and that they don't cover some of the things we need to cover. Because policy, there are two things that undergird policy: precedent, legal precedent, and best known practices. So you can look at some of the policies that were done in '95, very little has to be changed there. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to get back to what Dr. Benitez and I were trying to do last year. Identified areas. We identified the 600 series. Let's get that done. Dr. Negron has talked about priorities. Then we ought to do the same thing with policy. What are our policy priorities over the next several months? And what will it take to get that done? If I can use the example of facilities naming, Pat DeMayo and I worked on that for about 2 years. And we touched base with people on the city side. No, I'm sorry, that's procurement. We touched base with all the people we need to touch base with. Unfortunately, we didn't have the board that we have now. I'm very optimistic about this board. And we finally got it done. But when I looked into the website today, I didn't see the part that we had in there about program evaluation. That, any vendor that we hired ought to be able to, now maybe I missed it, ought to be able to show that they are effective in what we hired them to do. The other thing is that when we start working on this policy, we need expertise within the district working with us together. So if it's a special ed issue, we got our special ed people there to say, well, no, this language is not consistent. Let's try this and try that. We need to do all of that together, which is consistent with the presentation that Dr. Negron just gave us. And as Dr. Benitez said, in the first reading, we need to know that we're gonna read it well, we're gonna get information back to the governance committee, make the changes, and then go to the second reading. And then it's up to the staff to develop the administrative procedures that are necessary to breathe life into the policy. So that means that we have to be very clear about the rules we're trying to develop, the roles of the various people, and clarifying who will do what by when, the specific responsibilities, which means clarifying specific task measures and due dates, and then of course results. And that goes back to something that was said in the Negron presentation. What are the accountability measures that will let us know whether or not our policy is in the right place? And we're asking the district to do the right thing. And then we go back to reset, where we use the feedback metrics for continuous improvement. We need to develop a common language that everybody understands, a common process that everybody understands, and clarity around who will do what by when, so that we can hold people accountable. Now, that speaks to students and parents as well. For instance, in our attendance policy, we're not responsible for making sure the kids get up in the morning and come to school. We can try all the gimmicks we want, but the bottom line is that's a family responsibility. And as a child gets older, that's a child's responsibility. And so we need to be very clear about every single person's role in this quest for excellence that we're about to embark on, and help students and parents and other people other than teachers and administrators understand that if we're trying to build a symphony, we can't have anybody in the orchestra playing bad notes or not showing up for rehearsal. So the accountability is a two-way street, and we need to really stress that. Schools have gotten away from it. We expect schools to do everything for everybody at all times, and schools have never been places where you can just come in and not do anything and achieve. You have to work your behind off, and the poorer you are, the harder you have to work. That's just the facts. So let's try to align this stuff with what we're already doing, and let's try to go through this process and give people the opportunity to input as much as possible. But at some point, we have to have a second reading and make a decision, and that's where I support Dr. Benitez on that piece. And we're going to need help from the administrators in the school district and the teachers and everybody else.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. And Dr. Benitez, I know that there have been conversations about a board liaison, and I know that Dr. Negron is working on that. So to be continued. Okay, food service task group report, Dr. Yarborough.
Hi, thank you. The task group will meet in February, early February, and we'll continue to work on our sustainability and climate topics for our district, as well as increasing our food support, grocery support during school breaks, and surveying families to identify who would like that partnership, and also reaching out to community partners to see who can increase the funding and collaboration in order to increase the food distribution. So we'll meet in February.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? Okay, seeing none, that was the last item on the agenda, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Dr. Benitez? Okay, it's been properly seconded by Dr. Benitez. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz Bustamante? He's gone. Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone.
Good night.